I'm Howard Lovey of the Alliance of Independent Authors and book editor at howardlovey.com, and you're listening to Inspirational Indie Authors. Every episode, I interview an Ally member to find out what inspires them and how they are an inspiration to other authors. My guest this episode is Suzanne Barratt, who writes as S.J. Barratt. She blends her background in agriculture and environmental communications with her love of Scotland and Shetland to create eco-adventure stories for middle grade readers. We talked about her childhood surrounded by books and nature, how she shaped her writing through research and collaboration, and why the indie path gives her the creative freedom she values. I'll let Suzanne Barratt tell her story.
Hello, Howard. I'm Suzanne Barratt, or S.J. Barratt is my pen name, and I write children's books, eco-adventures. They're all based in Shetland because I've fallen in love with Scotland and Shetland, and I'm trying to inspire kids to leave their screens and leave the Wi-Fi for wildlife and to get back into nature. Because when I was a kid, I spent so much time outside with my dog, on my bike, and I just want kids to experience that sort of life again, because I feel that so many kids are just in front of their screens. There's a variety of screens today, whether it's computers, phones, or TV, and they're just so distracting. They really are, from connecting with people and nature.
What the kids say, touch grass, I think.
That's a good expression. I haven't heard that one.
I know, I like that one.
Touch grass. Okay, we're going to have to weave that in somewhere.
There's some hope, though. My 21-year-old son is doing everything analog now. He just got a flip phone, and so he's not hooked into a smartphone, which is a little bit annoying for me because then I can't contact him as much as I want to.
Maybe you contacted him too much, and maybe
that's why, right? Before we go into your books, let's start from the beginning. Where did you grow up, and was storytelling or reading or connection with nature always a part of your life?
Yeah, definitely reading. Yeah, well, I was born in the US, would you believe? So, but English parents, and we came back to England when I was about 2, and so I was brought up in Britain, near Hertfordshire, so it's around London, northeast London, the Shires, so it's the home counties around London. And it's agricultural land, basically. It's there's lots of farmland and lots of woods and parks and so on, so it's very green. And I spent my childhood outside, as I said, and reading. I would organize my girlfriends into reading clubs, and we would share books, and we wouldn't really do reviews or anything at that time. But I remember when I was a teenager, I was asked by the local library, because I was a keen reader, to review books from my age. So yeah, definitely a childhood surrounded by books, encouraged to read and to be outside. So it's a mix between inside and outside, yeah.
Was that something even at a young age that you thought you might want to do for a living, or?
Yes, I remember I desperately wanted to be a journalist, and unfortunately I was put off by surrounding adults at the time. I was told I was too introverted to be a journalist. So I missed out on that career, but I have worked in communications for a couple of decades now, and I work in agriculture. So the love of nature and wildlife and so on has sort of fed through my career and a couple of decades working in agriculture.
Well, I'm an introvert too, and I spent the first half of my career as a journalist.
So how did you manage that?
You get over it. You steel yourself when you're about to call somebody or speak to a stranger, but I managed to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing for communications, really. You have to be half or half, and you have to do a lot of public speaking, and you have to put yourself out there. So it's the same. So it was bad advice that I had at the time, but there you go.
Well, you married kind of both worlds, your love of nature and of writing with environmental communication.
Exactly, which is why I took the topic of ecology, agriculture for my kids' books, because the advice that I had when I started wanting to have a writing project was write about what you know. So what do I know? Which is why farming, agriculture came to mind. And the fact that I wanted to write for kids, so middle grade, 8, 9 to 12, I thought, well, I've got to find a sort of background of a small farm, and which is why I was thinking about Scotland. At the time, my son was studying in Dundee. So maybe my heart was already there, with my son studying for 4 years. And we were going to Scotland quite a lot. And so the idea of crofting came into mind. And through research, I discovered the Shetland Islands. And I discovered this fantastic island called Fula, where only 30 people live. They live off the land, crofting, self-sufficiency farming. They have sheep, they have Shetland ponies, fishing. And so I thought, wow, what about if I bring in a couple of twins, age 12, from London, and sort of, drop them in that culture? What is going to happen? And that was the idea for the story.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. And first, I'm just a dumb American, so pardon my ignorance, but what is crofting?
Crofting is a small self-sufficient type farm. Crofting is an ancient agricultural method, really, that's been in Ireland and Scotland for centuries. And the whole of Scotland and Ireland was made up of crofts, and they're becoming less and less now because of industrial farming and so on. But in Shetland, it's like in a time warp. It really is. And there are still crofts where people make a living from working the land. So it's a few fields, it's a few animals, and they basically, self-sufficient.
And also, obviously, a good setting to tell stories as well.
Yes, and of course in Scotland there's so much mythology and interesting facts. I mean, to go back to this island, Fula in Shetland, they're actually in a different time scale. They follow the Julian calendar still. So it means that they celebrate the end of the year 13 days after we do in our Gregorian calendar. So it's quite fascinating. It really is a different world.
Now, why did you decide to write specifically for middle grade readers? That's a tough audience.
It is. And I've discovered how difficult it is when you come to the marketing and the selling, because you're talking to the parents, but they're not the ones necessarily reading the stories. So it is probably the most difficult, but it's the age where you can really inspire, and they're so enthusiastic. I've done workshops with kids that age for writing and about my books. So they have a Q&A question, sort of workshops in schools and so on. And they're just so enthusiastic about the world still. And it's just a wonderful audience. It really is.
Yeah, they're not quite as cynical as they'll become later in their teen years, right?
Exactly. I mean, they're just so vibrant. And if you can manage to spark them in a direction for dialogue or for questions, it's fantastic. I did 4 workshops last spring at a local bilingual school, and because I'm based in France, which makes it even more difficult, writing in English, marketing in English, but you're in a different country. But I had access to 4 classes, so like 80, 90 kids in a bilingual situation. And the conversations were fascinating. They really were. For example, I did not know that 10-year-olds are interested in stories that have a hug and a kiss, for example. I did not think that the romantic interest would be for their age group, but it is. So that was an eye-opener, that sort of thing.
Well, they say for especially for young readers, you have protagonists who are a little bit older than they are.
Yes.
That's what I've heard about.
Yes, Yes, exactly. And when I did a writing workshop with kids who were 10, 11, they were writing stories about kids who are 18. So they really do want stories who are older than they are, for sure.
So let's talk about living at the edge of the world. And I think it's a series, right, with the seasons?
Yes, that's right. I started in the winter. So these twins from London, Tabitha and Timothy, they get sent to stay with this uncle that they've never ever met. So they're in a completely different world. And Tabitha is this unbearable, spoilt brat. And of course, it's interesting to see how living at the edge of the world is going to change her. So she does change for the better, but I'm not going to make a spoiler. And it was interesting describing how awful she was at the beginning and how she changed over the story. And then the second book is they're still there. The parents are off traveling. The mother is an influencer and so on. And so I talk a lot about social media as well, because Tabitha wants to be an influencer like her mum. And the brother, Timothy, he's totally into the wildlife scene, the birds, the insects, anything to do with nature. He is there. So it's a real contrast between the twins. And it's how they survive, really, in such a remote landscape.
Now, you do a lot of research from crofting to conservation and Viking archaeology.
Yes.
So how do you balance scientific and cultural accuracy while keeping the story engaging for young readers?
Yes, exactly. And at the beginning, I must admit, we're all on a writing journey, aren't we? And we do learn so much. Writing, publishing, especially when we're doing it ourselves. And well, with professional editing feedback as well. And what's interesting is when you do too much research, which I have done, you have so many nuggets that you want to share that you end up info dumping. So what I did first of all was in my research, I came across, would you believe, a writer on this island in Fula in Shetland, and she is a ranger on the island. So I had this wonderful correspondence with her, and she checked my first draft to make sure that all the agricultural aspects were correct and so on. So that was really, really wonderful feedback, the first and second book. And I've learned basically how to make my dialogue more engaging, how you mustn't do expository dialogue, for example, and the info dumping to avoid, and how to make it engaging for kids. So I've learned a lot along the way, and I've made many, many revisions and many drafts, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm a book editor when I'm not podcasting. And one thing I tried to emphasize is advancing the story through the characters and not through exposition.
Yes, exactly.
Especially
something I've really, really learned. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when they're talking about things like the environment. You don't want an encyclopedia entry.
No.
Yeah. So you've managed to do this effectively. You've won awards for winter, and I think with spring too.
Yes, they're starting to come in. That's good.
So how did that recognition shape your confidence and influence your approach?
Oh, well, the first award is amazing. It really is. I mean, it's incredible. It's exciting because I went back to my illustrator and said, "Oh, can you put the award on my cover, please?" I was so proud. And then you get other awards, which is great. And it's always wonderful, but you want more and more important awards, that's for sure. And so I was delighted to win the competition for the poem, for example, with Ali. That was great, with the Alliance of Independent Authors.
Can you describe that a little bit? Obviously,
sure.
That's how you first reached my attention, but tell me about this poem.
Yes, I saw it. I wasn't even a member of Ally at the beginning. And I saw, why do you self-publish? And it made me think, because I thought the question was interesting and nobody's ever asked me why. Everybody just assumes that you self-publish because you've never got an agent, or you've never had a publishing house interested in your work. And it's not really the case, because being a communicator, I'm used to working with words and images to illustrate my words. And that's how I approached the writing project. I had a story. And so my first outreach was to find an illustrator to illustrate my story. And then I was going to pitch to the publishing houses. And then I realized that I was too far ahead. It's normally a publishing house that would choose the illustrator, for example. And I love that creative journey that you have with an illustrator to find the right way to depict your words and your world and the island that I had in mind for my stories, for my series. So, working with Jenny Notborn, the illustrator, was a delight, and I didn't want to give that up. So I thought, okay, how do I go forward? Because I need feedback on my actual story. I need an editor. I didn't know at the time the wealth of platforms that you have. And I discovered Readsy, which was wonderful. And then I decided, that's fantastic. I can hire an editor, get my story into shape. I have my illustrator. And that's how I started on my journey for self-publishing. And it really was a way to be free creatively at first. It really was to be able to work myself with the illustrator.
Readsy's great. I'm an editor through Readsy too, and I've met a lot of wonderful authors through that platform.
And it really helped shape my journey, that's for sure.
So tell me a little bit more about your writing habits.
Well, I think at the beginning I was a pantser, that's for sure. And I was inspired by the research that I did, which is why I was into the info dumping at the beginning. And now I'm working on my third book, which is Summer. And I really tried hard to plan it, to plot it. I had a template. I had the 7 points. I really did do architectural work on the plot and on the structure. And I think it shows because I've just got back my development report from the editor that I'm working with at the moment. I'm working with CIEP, which is the Chartered Institute of Editors, Siobhan O'Brien Holmes, and 38 pages I have back. So I'm processing it at the moment, and which is wonderful because she said no info dumping on the horizon. So that's good. So I'm learning as I go forward, that's for sure. So that's my next project for the coming months is to sift through all her advice and do a book map, basically. So I'm working on I started today, a book map, scene by scene, to see how I can weave in even more subplots and characterization and depth, really. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk briefly about marketing. You mentioned earlier that it's a little tough marketing this grade level because you're actually selling to the parents who don't necessarily read the books.
Yeah, to the parents. Yeah, exactly. So you have to have a hook to interest the parents, but the content has to interest the kids. But the kids can only get to it via the parents, really, because they're not the ones buying the book. So it is a bit of a quandary. And I think the secret is to do schools. And so you have instant contact to the children, but it's difficult to get into schools. So the ones I have done and the contact I've had with children has been wonderful and precious. And every moment and every comment they've made, I have lapped up, basically. But yeah, it is a challenge. I think as I go forward, I think I'll finish my series and then I'll think about young adult, which will be a shame because I won't be working with Jenny to do the illustrations of a children's book, but she could still be there for the covers, maybe.
Now, do you do things like Facebook ads or Amazon ads, or do you do any?
Yes, I haven't got very good on the ads. I've worked on BookBub recently. BookBub ads are very simple, and so I'm getting my head around those. I have experimented with Amazon ads. I'm still not an expert in that. I still need some lessons and to do a course. But the advertising is not easy. But yeah, I'm in social media and trying to get an author platform. I work with I'm on Story Origin to help with newsletter and also Booksy Buzz. Booksy Buzz is a relatively new platform to help with reviews and so on. And that's wonderful because
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, it's they're great. They're Australian. And so I'm getting Australian reviews and Canadian reviews. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's important, getting reviews.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. But tell me a little bit more about your visits to schools. How do you arrange that? And how do you make it not seem like you're just there to sell a book?
Well, I think to work with a teacher is the best thing. That's what happened this year with the 4 workshops I did at the local bilingual school. And it was definitely a teacher who was interested in the content, in the books. So we discussed what would be best for the different classes. And it was 4 different classes of different level, of reading level and language level. So we started off with the easiest. And the teacher read the 3 first chapters, but the kids were completely engaged. They really were. And the second level, so working up to the completely bilingual children, was interesting. They basically had 3 chapters to read in class, and the teacher prepared them about crofting, about Scottish culture and the Shetlands and so on. And some of the teachers as well prepared questions and so on. And it was a really good session. I mean, the class timing was like 3/4 of an hour, but it was 3/4 of an hour packed with questions and discussion. And I was asking them questions, they were as well. And that was really, really interesting.
Great. So you work with the teacher. The teacher does the educational component. So you're not just handed the classroom and said, they tell you good luck.
No, but with the very bilingual children, the teacher had asked me to talk about language elements. So we did talk about nouns and add metaphors, different language constructions and so on, just a little bit, but it was more about story. But what's amazing is that the children are always so amazed that you can spend a whole year working on a story, and they're flabbergasted that you can rewrite your story 3-4 times.
Yeah. That's great. That's wonderful. It's getting them, into the process of writing and having them think about it.
Yes, in this day and age of ChatGPT, I mean, they're unfortunately doing their homework with ChatGPT. So the teachers were saying that they prefer now for the homework to be done at school so that they make sure that it's not done by ChatGPT.
Oh, interesting. And ChatGPT is a good helper, but a lousy writer. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So tell me more about your upcoming book, Summer. You bring in themes of ocean pollution and
yes,
and kind of your protagonists, the twins, are growing a little older and their challenges become
yes, they're celebrating their 13th birthday, so they're becoming teenagers. And I'm trying to weave in the interesting mythology of Selkies. Selkies is like the Scottish mermaid, so it's a seal who becomes human as soon as they touch land, basically. And if you steal a Selkie skin, then they can't go back to being a seal. So it's an interesting mythology. So I'm trying to weave that into the story as well. But seeing as my stories are eco-adventure, realist stories, can I make it magical at the same time? This is my question.
Oh, right. Because it's very science-based, but you combine kind of magic realism?
That was the idea. But the editor was saying, seeing as you've got 2 books already, which are, straight up realistic adventures, if you're veering towards magical realism, is it going to upset your readers? You've got to be clear about the genre, is what she was saying.
Yeah.
So I need to think deeply about where I'm going with this story, as you know what it's like.
Well, one advantage of being an indie author is you don't necessarily have to follow all the tropes of every genre.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's going back to the poem, The Why. So, and it was really interesting because my first book, I had a little poem at the end of a little stanza at the end of every chapter. And an editor said, "Oh, scrap the poems." And I thought, scrap the poems? So I scrapped the poems at the end of every chapter, but I kept one poem, which is the hub of the story, because I enjoyed poems as a kid, and I'm sure kids prefer, they like different styles and so on. So I kept my poem preciously in every book, just one, not every chapter. And so I'm glad I did, I'm glad I didn't listen to that editor at the time, and I've kept one. And now that I've won this prize, I feel I can write a poem.
That's right. Very validating. Finally, as an indie author who blends science and environment and a little bit of myth, what do you see as your mission, primarily in children's literature? To entertain, to inform, a little bit of both? Well,
I really would like kids to finish the book and then get up and go for a walk and get out in nature. I really would. I just love them to, I don't know, if they've got a dog, take their dog for a walk, or go on a bike, or make a camp in the nearby forest and just get outside. If I could inspire kids to do that, then I've achieved my mission.
Sounds great. Well, what advice would you give to other indie authors hoping to make an impact on young readers?
As much as possible, connect with the audience, because we have to rely so much on adults to validate our work. And the more you can talk to children and find out and sometimes it's very difficult for them to say why they like a story, why they don't like a story. But I remember drafting my first story with my niece, and that was really, really great to work alongside her and show her a chapter. And she was the one who put the dog in the story, for example. She wanted a border collie. So the border collie was in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Wiz is thanks to her. So I think talk to the target audience, the age and so on, as much as possible, and get their feedback as much as they can articulate it, really.
That's great advice. Thank you, Suzanne. I really appreciate you taking a few moments to talk to us, and best of luck to you and your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Howard.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Inspirational Indie Authors. I'm Howard Lovey, Content and Communications Manager at the Alliance of Independent Authors and book editor at howardlovey.com. If you are a member of Ally and would like to be considered for the show, please write to me at howard@allianceindependentauthors.org and tell me what inspires you and how you can inspire other authors. As always, find more author advice, tips, and tools at our Self-Publishing Advice Center, selfpublishingadvice.org. And if you haven't already, we invite you to join our organization and become a self-publishing ally. You can do that at allianceindependentauthors.org.